Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for the 10th and final session of Ocean Acidification Week, a virtual multi-day forum to highlight ocean acidification research and initiatives. This session is the capstone of OA Week. OA Week is presented by GOA-ON, the Global Ocean Acidification Observing Network, by NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, by the IAEA OAIC, the International Atomic Energy Agency Ocean Acidification International Coordination Center, and by the IOC-UNESCO, the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. We were glad to see that over 171 people pre-registered for today's session. Right now, we have about 50 attendants, and we hope that the rest join very soon. My name is Michael Aquafreda, and I work with the GOHAN Secretariat. I'm also a Knaus Fellow working with the NOAA Ocean Acidification Program, and today I'll be moderating the session. During the presentation, all participants are in listen-only mode. You are welcome to type any questions into the questions box, which can be found at the bottom of the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. You can also post questions and share your insights on Twitter using the hashtag OAWeek2020. We do ask that you specify the speakers you are directing your questions to. We'll be monitoring incoming questions and will pose them to our speakers during the question and answer section, which will begin immediately after the last presentation. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available through the GOA-ON YouTube channel shortly after OA Week ends. Today's capstone session will feature short presentations and a question and answer panel discussion with three of the world's leading experts on ocean acidification. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Jan Newton, the co-chair of GOA-ON, Dr. Bronte Tilbrook, also a co-chair of GOA-ON, and Dr. Jean-Pierre Gratuso, co-chair of the International Scientific Committee for the 5th International Symposium on the Ocean in a High CO2 World. At this point, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Bronte Tilbrook. Bronte, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thanks, Mike. And thank you for all your effort in running this series of webinars, and for the communications team also. So first slide. GOA-ON was established in 2012 to, in response to concerns about the impact of ocean acidification on marine life. Its main aims is to develop a network for the detection of ocean acidification and ecosystem response from local to global scales. And as Mike said in his introduction, three main organisations that support GOA-ON are the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, NOAA's Ocean Acidification Program, and the International Atomic Energy Agency, with logos shown on the bottom of the slide. But there are a number of other organisations that GOA-ON coordinates efforts with to build capacity and develop the network. And some of these organisations are shown in the logos on the bottom left, and they include the Ocean Foundation, the International Alliance to Combat Ocean Acidification, the Integrated Ocean Observing System, and the International Ocean Coordination Project. And there are many others that probably could be added here too, but the point of this is to say that it's a collaborative effort and groups cooperate to deliver outcomes and understanding of ocean acidification and its impacts. And it's been a really important aspect of GOA-ON. Next slide, please, Mike. The talks you've heard in the next, please. Yeah, thanks. The talks you heard in over this week have really been set up in part due to the COVID-19 pandemic causing a delay in the scheduling of the 5th International Symposium on the Ocean in the High CO2 World. It was originally scheduled for this week in Lima, Peru, and it's been set back 12 months due to the pandemic. It's a very important meeting, and it's a major opportunity to bring together the ocean acidification community to discuss the latest developments and future needs and priorities. And abstract submissions are still open through the website link shown in the middle of this figure, and everyone's encouraged to attend. Next slide, please, Mike. This slide is to provide some background on how GOA-ON has developed this network, and It started in 2012 in a meeting in Seattle, and there have been 3 major workshops since then with other side meetings occurring. And some of the priorities established by the community in these workshops are listed in the figure. So the most recent workshop was in Hangzhou, China. And for example, the priorities, or 2 of the major priorities identified at that time were the need to understand more on coastal ocean acidification and the interaction of ocean acidification with other stresses like warming and deoxygenation. So the point of this figure is that GOAN's continually evolving. It's listening to the community and using latest developments to direct its efforts. So the next slide, please, identifies some of the actions that GOAN's taken to address its main goals. And in 2012, at the start, GOAN was set up through a meeting with about 50 researchers in attendance. And since then, it's grown to have a membership of more than 750 from members from 100 countries. From over the same period, 8 regional collaborative hubs have been formed, and these hubs are important to improve networking and bring together regional expertise and knowledge to address ocean acidification issues in different regions. The workshop mentioned in the previous slide identified the need for, or the workshop priorities identified the needs for more information on locations where data are collected and also to improve access to these data, and it's resulted in the development of a data portal available through the GOAN's website, which identifies different assets for measuring ocean acidification, including moorings and ship-based assets, and links to investigators and data. And associated with the data portal has been the development of best practice guidelines, including reporting for the Sustainable Development Goal 14.3 on ocean acidity. GOAN members are also been closely involved in capacity building efforts with groups like the International Atomic Energy Agency and the Ocean Foundation. And to date, I believe there's been over 500 participants from developing countries involved in these workshops. Another development's been the setup of a mentoring program called Peer-to-Peer. And this connects early career researchers with experts in the field, and it helps address a range of needs, including things like the design of experiments and sampling protocols through to career development. Communication's been another important aspect of GOAN activities, and this occurs through webinars, the website, through involvement in workshops, and through attendance and speaking at major conferences like the conference parties and other events, and these are also mentioned on the GOAN website. So all these actions have helped to highlight the concerns around ocean acidification, and as a consequence, GOAN has been involved in the establishment of the UN Sustainable Development Goal 14.3 on ocean acidification that occurred in 2015. The reporting to the World Meteorological Organization Headline Climate Indicator on Ocean Acidification, which was established in 2018, and also in discussions on establishing an action plan for ocean acidification in the Commonwealth Blue Charter. So there's a lot of work continuing to evolve through GOAN, and to and in particular this link to policy and science is growing, and so there's a lot of work to do in the future. We'll hear some more about this in by the next 2 speakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bronte. At this time, I'd like to invite Jean-Pierre Gratuso to unmute yourself, and I will bring up your slides.
Thank you, Mike. So while preparing this capstone session, Jane, Bronte, and I decided that I should focus on 4 items the high CO2 meeting. The OAICC present the coverage of OA in IPCC reports and then some gaps that I think were present this week and also in general. Next slide. So this, as Bronte just said, and it was mentioned several times during this week, in fact, the high CO2 meeting, which was due to take place this week in Lima, Peru, has been postponed, and Wilmer Carbajal, the lead local organizer, told me 2 days ago that it will likely take place 13 to 16 of September 2021, still in Lima, Peru, of course. I just want to insist that there is a great program. We have received already very exciting abstracts, and I'd like also to highlight outstanding plenary speakers that we have secured. The plenary talks will be live streamed and recorded. Sarah Cooley, Dimitri Gutierrez, Samantha Siedlecki, Diane Shi, Guillermo Diaz-Pulido, Christian Vargas, Jen Lubchenko, Jesse Turner, and Frédéric Gazot. It's a fantastic lineup for great plenary talks. It's really, this high CO2 symposium is a meeting you certainly do not want to miss. Next. I'd like now to move to the OAICC, which was mentioned several times also this week. It's the Ocean Acidification International Coordination Center. The OAICC is based in, is hosted by the International Atomic Energy Agency in the lab in Monaco. It was launched in 2012, and what I'd like to insist here is the fact that the OAICC has the goal to communicate, promote, and facilitate. So there are 3 pillars. One is the science pillar, the other one is the dissemination to the general public and policymakers, and the third one, capacity building. There are wonderful, really fantastic resources provided by the OAICC. There is a news stream where you can get every day the latest news on everything related to OA. There is a bibliographic database hosted as a Mendeley database, providing references, abstracts, and keywords. There is a data portal where you can get the data from more than 900 papers on the biological response to ocean acidification. This database is located at Pangaea, that's the World Data Center. And the training involved since 2012, 510 scientists from 69 countries. So you are all welcome to use those resources, which are, of course, free and open access. Next. So this is one of the outcomes of the OAICC bibliographic database, just to show, I mean, the tremendous increase in the number of papers published every year on ocean acidification, about 700 papers published every year in the past 3-4 years. And the number of authors involved, about 2,500 in the past 2 years. Next, as a result of this tremendous increase in knowledge on ocean acidification, the coverage of OA in IPCC reports has expanded a lot. In 2007, in the 4th assessment report, OA was barely covered by in the Working Group 2 report, thanks to the efforts of Carol Turley from PML. In the 5th assessment report published in 2013 and 14, OA was extensively covered. It was a key new element. For example, in the Working Group 2 report, it was covered in 3 chapters, 5, 6, 30, in the cross-chapter box, in the technical summary, and in the summary for policymakers. In the IR6 cycle, it's covered in the special report on the ocean and the cryosphere in the changing climate. The cover is shown here, and it will be for sure covered in the AR6 report to be published in 2021. Next. And finally, some gaps. I have not attended all sessions this week. I have only attended the lunchtime session, so I don't pretend to have a good overview of everything that happened. But in general, coastal projections are really, really poor. I mean, this is a huge gap, and that is critical because the coast is where most human activities take place, fisheries, recreation, etc. So having better coastal projection is quite critical. The biological response, we still show this graph, still mostly focused at the species scale single drivers and short time periods, and this needs to, I mean, it's improving, most in part due to a SCORE working group led by Phil Boyd, and I recommend, if you're interested in multiple drivers, to check Phil's paper in Global Change Biology, providing a framework for multi-driver experiments. And finally, the solution space. I mean, the link to policy was mentioned. How do we do to minimize ocean acidification and its impacts? Adaptation, mitigation, of course, and this is work being done as part of the UNFCCC, but also adaptation is going to be critical because reduction of CO2 emissions is still not proceeding as fast as it should. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Jean-Pierre. At this time, I'd like to invite Jan Newton to unmute herself, and I will bring up her presentation.
Thanks, Mike. So I'll just start out by saying that I am so pleased to be here at the final session of OA Week, which I think has been just a great success. I wasn't able to listen to all of the sessions, but I'm very glad that these were recorded and are readily available so that all of us can hear the ones we missed. So with regard to my reflections, I must say I was incredibly impressed with OA Week. I really liked the structure, hearing from the regional hubs and our partners, and I heard much progress on GOA-ON's 3 goals, which are shown here. I was so happy to hear about all of the observations in the near shore, the coastal ocean, as well as the offshore areas. As Bronte said, GOA-ON works at local through global scales, and the OA Week talks really showed them off, I thought. The mention of data sharing and channeling data to support the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 14.3.1 was very gratifying to hear from several talks. We need more of this in the future, and I think GOA-ON is poised to aid with that. I was also very happy to hear of the progress on biological observations and experiments, and from all over the world. Another aspect that I heard in that vein was that scientists are not just thinking about OA alone, but looking at biology in a multi-stressor context. This is so important for us as a community, certainly considering hypoxia and thermal stress, but I heard people also thinking about harmful algal blooms, plastic contamination, and other stressors that organisms are encountering in marine waters worldwide, and I hope this emphasis continues to grow. I heard less about modeling and forecasts, but this may have been due to the limits of what I listened to. But I do want to emphasize a challenge that we heard at the 4th GOA-ON workshop in Hangzhou, China, that capacity building and modeling should also be developed. I think this is an excellent case to think about. Like the other goals, this requires sophisticated knowledge and knowledge transfer, but needs only a computer and drives. So it seems ripe to me for development for capacity as we look forward. So next slide. So as we've said, and you can click it one more time, as we've said, a key factor in GOA-ON's success is the ability to focus across and within geographic scales but also our networking and partnering worldwide of the people. We heard from 4 key partners listed here who have each made foundational contributions to GOAN, increasing our ability to achieve our goals. To make observations greatly aided by the GOOSE framework and partners, and to expand our biological understanding is and can be enhanced via MBOM. And to build capacity to do these efforts worldwide so that the G in GOAN isn't just aspirational. While we need to do more, we've made great progress with tangible success, thanks in no small measure to the Ocean Foundation. And lastly, while GOAN is scientifically based and science-driven, the efforts of the OA Alliance provides a way for GOAN's knowledge to be translated to decision makers. One more click. So, and go ahead to the next one. So we need each other, but we also need you. If you're listening and you're not a GOAN member, please join us. You can see the URL there at the bottom. Find your regional hub and join them too. And if you don't have a hub nearby, work with others to make one. This is really how all the hubs have started. And GOAN itself, 62 scientists from 23 nations in a room in Seattle. Anyway, GOAN is and has always been bottom-up, grassroots, scientist-driven. So don't be satisfied. Help us do more. Please check out the GOAN website. Go ahead and click again for very practical resources there, like the implementation strategy and resources for reporting on SDG 14.3.1. So I don't know about you, but I'm feeling an ever-increasing sense of urgency regarding climate change, regarding ocean acidification. And the effects will become more apparent with time. We owe the future, we owe those generations our focus now on this. While I am incredibly proud of GOAN, I also know we need to step it up. This is not a time for self-congratulating, but for action to expand the network, to expand our reach, to expand the audience that hears about how the ocean and its organisms may be changing. So I ask you, please feel that responsibility and join us. We have here the peer-to-peer mentorship and the informing policy directions GOAN does. Help us do that and help us do more. And I want to point out that we have an incredible opportunity with the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. The UN Decade of the Ocean is starting in January 2020. This is an enormous opportunity to elevate awareness of what has worked so well in GOAN. We've already commented on the implementation strategy for the decade and want to do more. So that our strategies may be shared, but also for proposing what we could do with others to advance where we are. So I guess my point is, please work with us, stay in contact via the OA Information Exchange, or just contacting us or your colleagues by email. Okay, so before I turn this back to Mike, if you could advance it one more time, on behalf of all of GOAN, we really want to share some thanks. Above all, to the amazing and talented Secretariat, whose names are listed here and work to bring a vision as well as an implementation of the OA Week. Maureen, who just rotated out of IAEA, is now in grad school, but helped a lot with this. Katarina from IOC-UNESCO, who is also monumental in preparation, and sadly right now is recuperating from shoulder surgery that knocked her out of aiding with this week. And last, but certainly not least, to Mike from NOAA, who joined them in the preparation and then did the extremely heavy lift of hosting most all of the sessions, and in a very effective and enjoyable manner. And I've heard some say he has a future in radio or TV coming. So we owe an enormous thanks to his dedication for the big lift. So Mike, thank you so much. I really want to help those who helped us, I really want to thank those who helped us advertise for OA Week, who are listed here, Jen, Brady, Kirsten, and some of the other entities you see there, and I'm sure I've left some folks off of this. Our thanks to the informative and dedicated speakers who shared their science, and the hub chairs for their leadership, and really to everybody, including you, for participating. So thanks so much, and I'm going to turn it back to Mike for questions.
Thank you so much, Jan, for that presentation. And on a personal note, I want to thank you for thanking me. It was really a pleasure for me to be a part of Ocean Acidification Week. So why don't we all turn our cameras on, and we could begin the question and answer panel discussion. So we don't have too much time left, so I'm going to be asking each of you 2 questions. Or it's really 2 questions that all 3 of you, I hope, will answer. So the first question is, what do you see as the biggest challenge right now in the field of OA? And the second question is, what makes you hopeful when you think about the future of OA? All 3 of you touched upon this a little bit, but I was hoping that you could each kind of pick one thing that you think is a challenge, and then what gives you hope as we look forward. Bronte, why don't we begin with you?
Sorry, Mike, I'd like to just answer this by saying I think the development of the linked policy and really getting the message across to governments and decision makers about the importance of ocean acidification is really a key need into the future, and it's growing. So there's some optimism. I think it still has a long way to go, though. Many groups don't have any understanding of it in countries, governments, decision makers. So it's important. Thank you.
Jean-Pierre, you mentioned coastal projections, biological responses, multiple stressors. You also mentioned policy. How do we build or how do we work towards fighting those challenges or working against those challenges?
So you asked for the main challenge. The main challenge for me is projections. I mean, reducing the uncertainties about projections, not only of OA and its impact, but also projections of multiple drivers. OA was a field by itself until now, but now it has to merge with, with studies looking at the effect of ocean warming, changes in salinity. We have seen just this week a fantastic paper published by Chen and colleagues on the changes in salinity. All those changes occurring together. I mean, projecting those changes in the future and projecting the impacts, that is a fantastic challenge. And there are frameworks existing, and I think the hope I have is that we know the solutions. I mean, the solutions are well known. The link to policymakers is being made by many of us. The need for mitigation is well known, and now it's increasingly clear that we will need to adapt to changes that are inevitable in terms of ocean pH, ocean warming, and the rest of it. So the hope is that we know the solutions, and the challenge is in the implementation of those solutions.
Yeah, and one thing that you mentioned was the uncertainty, and this makes me think of something I heard in another presentation earlier, that uncertainty means one thing to a scientist, and it means something completely different to someone from the general public, and lawmakers and policymakers are often members of the general public. So I think that kind of ties together the challenge that you mentioned to Bronte's, that we need to understand, we need to minimize uncertainty from a scientific perspective, but we also need to convey to the general public that just because we're not quite certain about a particular parameter doesn't mean we don't know overall what the general effect will be.
Yes, we know enough to act.
That's right. We know enough. I like that. Jan, what about you? What do you see as the biggest challenge?
Yeah, for me, it really is the politicalization of science that has me extremely worried, because the public will can sometimes follow that, and that is really not enabling sound decisions. And so I worry, will our progress be quick enough to make differences? And so I see that as a big challenge. I think you know, while we're so happy about how GOA-ON has expanded in scale from 63 people to almost 800, that's great, but 800 is not huge. And so I think we have some challenges. Certainly there's scientific challenges, but for me, it's that scaling issue and the way the political framework that it's been couched in. So those are challenges, those are big challenges, but my hope really rests on the younger generation. I see such energy, and I was really impressed with, there was a panel with early career scientists, and I heard one say, you know, like, well, I knew I wanted to work on climate change, you know, when I was in you know, young, and now I'm pursuing my PhD and da 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 da. I mean, I didn't know those things when I was starting my career. I was fascinated by nature and wanted to understand the ocean, but it wasn't from a standpoint of really understanding our impacts on the ocean. So my hope really rests with that younger generation and with increasing awareness of the ocean. I really hope that this decade provides us with the ability to translate for the public how critical the ocean is to all of their lives. So those are my hopes. Thank you.
That's great. Jean-Pierre and Bronte, what makes you hopeful?
Well, for me, it's the development that's happened so far. And I think in the answer to all three questions are probably expressing similar concerns: provide the evidence, deliver and communicate that to policymakers and the public in general, and to build this effort. And so I think we've come a long way since 2012. It's been quite remarkable. I think GOA-ON has really shown a way to develop an observing system, and I expect it will continue to grow in the future. So I'm quite hopeful, but you know, there's still a lot of work to do.
And Jean-Pierre?
Yes, in terms of science, when you realize in just 20 years the amount of knowledge that has been accumulated is just absolutely stunning. Today, I cannot even read all the abstracts of papers published on ocean acidification. That's just astounding. So, I mean, clearly the scientific community is very active, dynamic, and I'm sure the future will show many more advances. So there is the hope that science is progressing and progressing fast. And as I said earlier, the hope is also that we know we are all concerned about the effects of ocean acidification and the effects of ocean warming and sea level rise, etc. And the hope is that we will provide enough evidence to the general public and to policymakers to implement the solutions to this issue. I am hopeful because, I mean, the evidence is accumulating on the political level. I mean, it's going a little bit up and down. Hopefully, it will get better at COP26 next year in Edinburgh, and hopefully progress will be made by every country on the front of mitigation, and but also locally on the front of adaptation. It's critical that also we investigate, as scientists, we investigate ways to adapt to the changes that are inevitable now.
Thank you. I certainly feel more hopeful after listening to all three of you. Before we say our goodbyes, do either of you have any last things you'd like to say?
No.
Well, like Jan, I'd like to thank all speakers, and particularly Mike for all the effort he's put into this. It's really been dropped in at last minute to cover for Katharina's injury, and you know, a really remarkable job. And the same for the NOAA communications team, which have put in a lot of effort. And you know, there's so many people in GOA-ON who have contributed, the hub leaders, all the members, and that's an important message. Is this the output from GOA-ON and the development of ocean acidification research is really, it's an effort by the members, and they all should be congratulated. It's really, really important and great to see it happen so far.
Yes, I have one last word on my side. I fully agree with Bronte, and see you in Lima next year.
Absolutely.
I like the sound of that, Jean-Pierre, and I truly do. And I just want to reiterate what I said in my remarks to all of those listening. Please join us. Please help to make GOA-ON just even better and better and more effective than we already are. And yeah, again, thank you, Mike.
Well, thank you, Jan. Thank you, Bronte. Thank you, Jean-Pierre, for joining us today. To the audience that's listening, if you have other questions for our three speakers, please post them on Twitter using the hashtag OAWeek2020, or you can post them on the Ocean Acidification Information Exchange. That's where I'll be putting all the questions that we collect from the questions box, and that's where we'll be continuing this conversation. There's already been a couple posts made on the OAIE, and it's a really excellent platform for OA scientists, stakeholders, and decision makers. Once again, I would like to thank all of our presenters from all of the different hubs that shared work over the last few days. I'd like to thank these speakers, and if you're not a member of GOA-ON, please go to goon.org and sign up today. Thank you all very much for joining us for Ocean Acidification Week 2020, and we'll see you in Lima next year for the High CO2 Symposium. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Gracias.